Welcome to Mex Moves, our weekly podcast on Mexican business and finance in English. I'm Damien Fraser.
And I'm Eduardo Garcia.
This week, we're going to look at two subjects. One is e-commerce in Mexico, how it's grown. And I'm really excited to have with us an interview with Gloria Canales, who's the head of digital at Grupo Coppel, Mexico's leading retailer. And we're also going to talk about movie and production in Mexico following the announcement last week by Netflix that it's going to be investing $1 billion in Mexico. And we also have an interview with Rodrigo Sebastián González, who is the co-founder and executive producer at Woo Films, probably the leading Netflix independent producer in Mexico. So that's what we have for us today. So e-commerce in Mexico, how are you seeing the landscape?
Well, I mean, it's amazing how over the past, what would say, is 5 years, the number of possibilities that we customers have to buy things online. It's amazing. I still go out and buy stuff, but I guess the pandemic was a crucial moment for that to change. More in Mexico, where we were more antagonistic, may I say so, of providing our credit card and things like that online. And now I think people have come to rely and trust the system. So without a doubt, I think the presence of e-commerce is impressive. Brick and mortar companies have now their digital sites, like we will hear with Gloria from Coppel, but all the other ones, Walmart, Liverpool, Palacio, all the big retailers have online presence. And there are also the new players like Temu and Shein from China and Mercado Libre in Latin America, who's been here for quite a while. Amazon for the past 10 years has been growing in Mexico. So it's a very interesting growing industry, I suspect.
That's right. I think you can maybe divide it into sort of three groups. One, you have the pure e-commerce plays, and those are obviously dominated by Mercado Libre and Amazon. And there, the numbers are pretty astonishing. I don't think Amazon breaks down their Mexico numbers, but Mercado Libre does do a breakdown, and over the last decade, they've seen more than a 30 times increase in their gross merchandise value from about $330 million a decade ago to 12, $13 billion right now. So, and they seem to have, based on the data that I've been able to look at, seem to have overtaken Amazon or remained larger than Amazon in Mexico. One of the sort of few markets where, so far at least, Amazon has been bested. And we can go into some of the reasons why Mercado Libre has done such a brilliant job. Because although they've been around since 99, originally, when they really their kind of growth in Mexico has been since 2015.
Right.
When Amazon came in and they had to take a big strategic decision to double down on Mexico or leave it to the Americans, and they decided to double down and didn't initially see the benefits of that. But then COVID came and saw this massive growth. But quite interestingly, the growth post-COVID, which has not been the case of every COVID beneficiary, has remained really, really strong. So they've been growing their gross merchandise value.
It took them a little while for them to get their business strategy, it seems to me. I mean, we heard of Mercado Libre from a very early time, like you said, 1999, but really has gotten its act together since 2015.
And that, I was listening to an interview on White Paper with Renee Lankenau and Gabriel, the founder of Mercado Libre. And that was very much driven by Amazon coming into Mexico. Sometimes when a competitor comes in,
you shape up,
and it turns out to be a good thing, not a bad thing, as it were. It forces you to concentrate on the market. Then you have the traditional retailers, Coppel, Walmart, Liverpool, probably the three best known that have an omni-channel kind of online and physical strategy, and they've also seen very strong growth, even if not as strong as far as we know as the pure e-commerce. And then you've had the Chinese digital dragons, the Temu and
the dragons,
Sheins, which according to one note I saw from BTG Pactual, the Brazilian investment bank, last year Shein overtook Suburbia, which has been in Mexico for 50 years, with more than $1 billion of sales.
Wow!
And if you look at the downloads of apps in Mexico, Shein and Temu are consistently in the top 5. And if you look at traffic, they're also in the top 5. So they've seen this very, very strong growth, which obviously is now going to be significantly challenged by the new rules in place, which I think have been very directly focused on them, that they're no longer going to be exempt from
tax,
from
for
VAT
paying. Yeah.
and income tax. So there's a double whammy that they're going to now.
Which sounded like it was an unfair advantage that they had, no?
See, I mean, the minimus exception, which they benefited from, is pretty standard around the world. In fact, in Mexico it was $50. In the US it was 800.
Yeah.
In Europe it's also being removed. So it wasn't something that Mexico invented, but it applied to different time periods and
Correct.
when shipping costs were much higher than they are today. I think looking at Mercado Libre just reported its full year 2024 numbers at the end of last week, which are really strong numbers. And on Friday, the stock was up about 7%, which contrasted very markedly with Nubank, the other kind of tech darling in Latin America, whose stock was down 19% on Friday. And Mercado Libre said actually the going back to competition sometimes being a good thing, that Temu and Shein have actually stimulated the market for low value added, low price items, and that they've seen a significant growth themselves in these products for 50 pesos. And now that Mercado Libre has this huge scale in Mexico and the other big countries in Latin America, they can deliver these products quite effectively or drop them off at OXXO. So they have the logistics in place with the number of clients they have to make it viable economically to sell low value added products, which wouldn't have been the case pre-COVID for sure.
Correct.
So it hasn't, and now one would imagine that with Temu and Shein and other players like them having to pay duties, 19% VAT, you may well see Amazon, Mercado Libre, Coppel, in particular, Liverpool, Walmart, benefiting from being a bit more competitive versus those Chinese players that saw such explosive growth, partly because of the tax advantages that they had.
Yeah, the level playing field is helping those that were not taking advantage of that tax benefit. And one other interesting thing that is going to take place, I believe, is that the ones that have stores will probably combine their e-commerce with pickup on stores and deliveries that are more convenient for people that might not be at home and could go pick up the merchandise at the nearest retail place. So I think we've seen the online presence grow tremendously. Those that were not pure catching up, and now I think the game is changing again, or it's evolving in a different way than just what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's online profitability tends to be lower than physical store profitability. Now, if you don't have stores, that doesn't matter because any profits, as long as it's above you making a decent return on capital, are better than no profits. And if you have the scale that Mercado Libre has and the sheer volume of sales, then it's a good business. But I think for the Walmarts and the Liverpools, the challenge is online potentially cannibalizing
themselves
the high profit. So Walmart Mexico, Walmex, its stock has languished a bit over the last 3 years, especially if you compare it to Mercado Libre, which has been on fire. And part of the issue there is that they have very high sort of EBITDA margins in their Bodega Aurrera stores, and for online to match that is a challenge. So in Walmart Mexico, e-commerce is still only about 6% of their total sales, whereas in Walmart US it's 18%. So their e-commerce penetration has been much lower than in the US. Part of that is because so much of their sales are food that doesn't lend itself
for
very
delivery
effectively in a profitable way to e-commerce, although there are food delivery services, of course. And part of it is debit and credit card penetration is much lower. And so people are less able to buy online when you don't have as many electronic means of making the payments. Now, one of the success stories I would say there's probably 2 success stories behind Mercado Libre in Mexico that stand it out, even from Amazon. One is that they built more or less concurrent with Mercado Libre, Mercado Pago.
Right.
So they solved to an important degree, not fully, but to an important degree, the financial sort of barriers to e-commerce by developing their own payment system, their own acquirer, their own debit card, their own credit card. So Mercado Pago is now by far the largest fintech in Mexico.
Interesting.
And if you measure it, by credit cards portfolio or by payments, so they're both the largest in payments, and they're the largest in credit. Piggybacking off their e-commerce, but not just their e-commerce is also piggybacking off their payments and their credits. They've created this very attractive ecosystem. And then secondly, about 96% of the gross merchandise value of Mercado Libre is in the marketplaces, the 3P. So it's overwhelming amount of their sales are done through marketplace, where they don't have to provide the inventory. They're just doing the fulfillment and picking up a nice margin for doing that. And so, whereas in the case of Amazon, those figures are probably 60% is probably marketplace. So Mercado Libre has done a very, very good job at sort of understanding how to sell in the context of Mexico, which is basically letting everyone else in the country, all the small businesses out there, use your platform to sell their own products. It's a much more capital efficient model than having to have your own inventory. Now, everyone else, Walmart has its own marketplaces, and obviously Amazon does as well, but Mercado Libre has been especially successful.
Aggressive, right.
And that also then gives scale to your fulfillment and to your logistics. It brings down your average transportation costs. So that's been a big reason why, despite having a bigger size in e-commerce, they've actually grown faster, for example, than Walmex has done.
So credit and this marketplace probably are the key two elements that explain to us why Mercado Libre has outmaneuver Amazon in this country, if we compare those two pure.
Maybe you could argue culturally, they're 100% focused on
Latin America.
And this is their bread and butter. Whereas Amazon, Latin America is a bit of a afterthought, and that might also explain some of the differences. It's not that Amazon is not doing well. In fact, in their earnings call, they mentioned that they've reached profitability in Mexico after many years of heavy investments. But Mercado Libre is clearly there's different data points out there, but some people say their market share is around about 40%, and maybe Amazon's more about 25% in the e-commerce market. Although Amazon has a much bigger tech spend globally than Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre has 16,000 engineers right now. So they have the largest number of engineers in any company in the world focused on Latin America.
And they also don't get distracted by any other business. Amazon has Amazon Web Services. They're building these data centers. I don't know if that distracts the e-commerce side of the business, but it seems like Mercado Libre is focused on its retail enterprise, and they've done quite well in figuring out how to bring products. I've used Mercado Libre to buy products that would not be available on Amazon because of the marketplace you just described, Damien. And I think that gives it an edge, because I couldn't go anywhere else to buy what I wanted.
Yeah, I think so. I think you and I are more typical Amazon customers in Mexico.
Right.
Because we're older and probably more affluent than the average customer in Mexico, which tends to be more the Amazon niche. Mercado Libre tends to have younger people and slightly lower economic purchasing power. So we might find Mercado Libre a bit cluttered, low value products.
But like I said, I have purchased things that I couldn't find in Amazon that I found in Mercado Libre, and it worked. It's not as glossy or as polished, but it did to me what I wanted. So
and one of the big
good for them.
E-commerce sites in Mexico, funny enough, is actually Amazon US.
Correct.
Has about a 5% market share.
Yep.
Probably, I imagine, a lot in the north of Mexico, and the goods are often significantly cheaper.
That's right. Yeah. Have you done comparisons between the two?
Well, I have sometimes, because I have two of my daughters live in the US.
Right.
And sometimes look at the different prices and say if only could buy them at the US prices. But Coppel and Liverpool and Walmart have seen this threat and have reacted quite aggressively. Walmart actually hired from Mercado Libre its now CEO, which shows how seriously it's taking e-commerce, and their big plans to move that 6% of sales nearer to where it is in the US. We're about to hear on Coppel how they're planning to double their e-commerce, and there are many kind of advantages in having the hybrid model, if you can, in terms of especially if you offer credit like Liverpool and Coppel already do. If
Correct.
you use your own stores for pickups, you save on paying commissions to OXXO, and you have the brand and the trust and the warehouses and the distribution centers. So it's a long game. Mexico's there are different figures. It depends how you measure it, but Mexico e-commerce penetration is probably a little bit below 15%, it's a bit below the LATAM average. So it's in Asia, those numbers are 30 to 40%.
There's room for
So there's
growth.
a lot of room for further growth, and I think it's great for customers that there's so much competition.
Always bread and butter. More people trying to grab my money, more services I would get from them, and probably at a cheaper price too.
Terrific. Well, now we'll hand over to Gloria Canales, head of digital at Coppel. So it's a real pleasure to have with us today Gloria Canales. Gloria is the digital strategy director at Grupo Coppel. Gloria, in this role, leads the digital and omni-channel transformation strategy for both the retail and the financial services divisions. Gloria has 20 years of experience in retail and e-commerce, having worked in different countries such as Brazil, Argentina, Salvador, the US, India, and Mexico. And before joining Coppel, she was chief marketing officer at Amazon in Mexico. So, Gloria, thank you very much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. Why don't we get going with a question on e-commerce at Coppel? How does Coppel differentiate itself from the giants, from Mercado Libre and Amazon in the Mexican e-commerce space?
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. And with that, let's get started. More than comparing between players, I like to think about it as what differentiates Coppel in the eyes of the customer. What do we offer the customer, right? What's unique about Coppel? I'd say a few things. First of all, it's one of the oldest brands, retailer brands that we have in Mexico. We've been around for 80 years, and that brings us not only a lot of awareness, but also very high trust in our customer base. They know of us. A lot of them have interacted with us in several generations, either buying products, getting credits. So that familiarity and loyalty, it's one of the great differentiators. Second, it's our logistical capabilities. I would tell you, Coppel is probably one of the best, if not the best, in terms of what the industry knows as big and bulky deliveries. And what do we mean by big and bulky deliveries? Are refrigerators, sofas, big TVs above 60 inches, 65 inches. So all of those type of products, we're great at delivering them because we've done it. We started as a hardlines retailer and we've been doing it for several years. We have 27 distribution centers as well as our own fleet of trucks to deliver them. So for sure, that's another one of our strengths. The third one, I would say, it's our credit and our financial service ecosystem. It's been one of our strengths, quite honestly. Two-thirds of our sales are done via credit. And for some of our customers, I would say a wide majority, where the first interaction that we have with the financial sector. So a lot of our customers don't have a debit card or a credit card. And I think that's also very hard to replicate. We've got around 13,000, if I'm not mistaken, people on the street doing collections, which also allows for our models to have different parametrics, right, that allow giving credits to that base of the pyramid.
How easy is it to replicate the credit business online when you don't necessarily have a direct relationship with the customer?
I would say really hard. I would say that's one of the big barriers that Coppel has developed over the years, and that it's pretty unique, I would say, in this market. And then if I were to add one or two more unique things about Coppel, I would say it's the volume. Given the size of our footprint, we're able to have great logistical costs for imports from China, as well as very strong partnerships with brands such as Adidas, Levi's, Nike, that allows us to have exclusive and unique products to our customers. And lastly, but not least, it's our omni-channel strategy, like having almost 1900 stores and having a website and an app allows us to be there for the customer at any time. Do they want to go to the store on a Sunday afternoon with their family and make that the weekend trip? We're there for them. Do they want to buy at 11 p.m. on a weekday because they remember that they need a new blender? We're there for them as well. So that strong ecosystem with multiple touch points, I think it's a great strength. And to emphasize on this, we have kiosks within our stores that serve as a great point of entry for our customers into the digital system. And needless to say, customers to interact both with the physical and digital are double in terms of profitability for the group.
You're letting us know some of the advantages that Coppel has because of its history, its physical presence, logistic capability, volume, etc. But I want to ask you personally. I mean, you were at Amazon before, which was an online, pure digital e-commerce company, and you've switched to the physical and the online world. How was this different from your point of view? What surprised you that you didn't know before you started with Coppel?
Well, first of all, I made the change because I truly believe that the future is omni-channel. I think digital it's a very interesting channel that will grow at accelerated rates over the next few years, especially in Latin America, where it's still at an earlier stage. But I think in the future, and we've seen it with pure digital players that are making the move and experimenting and piloting with physical stores as well. So I thought Coppel is in a great position to take advantage of this duality. So that was starting to answer your question, the initial reason why I moved to Coppel. And then can you remind me the second part of the question?
No, basically that. I mean, I wanted just to hear your own experience of what surprised you as you went into the physical dual world that we're talking about.
Well, there were many aha moments that we just take for granted in the digital world. And I'll give you a few examples. When new employees join Couple, you have to go through different areas of the company. So I spent a few weeks at a store, I spent a few weeks at a fulfillment center, at the collections team. And one Monday morning, I get to the store, and one of the salespeople that were there said, "Oh, so there were a few price changes. We need to change the prices, right? Like relabel the products." And it shocked me. I mean, it's obvious, right? The price change, you need to reflect that change, but that's something that does not happen in the digital world because you don't have to relabel products. And the change of price sometimes it's even automatic, like doesn't even like have to get approval. So there's a lot more complexities in the physical world that have been very shocking to me, as well as complexities with inventory allocation. When you're in the digital world, your network is simpler in a way. You have a number of fulfillment centers, and then you have to optimize based on speed of sales of the products, where you want to locate them, and based on the demand. But when you have digital and physical coexisting, it's so much harder to optimize by regions.
And let me ask you if you see in Couple a disadvantage the number of products you offer to the public versus the number of products that Mercado Libre or Amazon offer their own customers. Is that something you try to narrow?
Yeah, I mean, the sky is the limit. In the end, what we want is to offer customers what they're looking for and always have that selection. And I think that's why we opened our marketplace business around 4 years ago. Because marketplace, it's a great lever to truly explode the breadth of your products. As a business, you have to be very mindful of what you carry in your inventory because it represents a financial investment. But nowadays, customers want one stop shops. They want to be able to find a breadth of selection, not only a few key products. So that's where you have to play between your different channels to complement your portfolio and be relevant.
Now, Gloria, you run digital at Coppel. How big is the digital business or the online business compared to Shane, Temu, Mercado Libre, Amazon Mexico? How would you position yourself?
We're fairly relevant in terms of sales. I think for Coppel, digital business is around 10% of our sales, and we are a fairly large group, not public, so I cannot reveal that specific information. But I would tell you we're one of the key players in the market in terms of sales, in terms of traffic, and then in terms of number of customers as well.
And is it growing faster than your physical business?
Definitely, for sure. And our goal and my job is for this to continue over the next 4 or 5 years to double the importance that the channel has for the group.
And how does the profitability compare between online and offline?
At this point, the online channel is very profitable, but it's less profitable than our physical stores. And we're fine with that. I think it's strategy, right? It's hard to have both growth and efficiencies in profitability. So at this point, we want to prioritize growth and market share.
And Gloria, one player we haven't mentioned that it's a replica or your twin competitor is Electra. How do
Mhm.
you differentiate with them?
Well, I would say we're, at least in my point of view, different from them. I wouldn't see them as our twin. It's definitely a relevant competitor. I think our strategy is more holistic, and I think the other great differentiator is customer attention and customer service that we provide.
Because both of you also provide credit. And I think that's
We both provide credit. Now, in terms of categories, Electra focuses almost purely on hard lines, electronics, motorcycles, large appliances, while Coppel has a broader number of categories, including apparel, including shoes, accessories, luggage. So I think that's one of the big differences. Size is another one. But again, I don't like to compare ourselves to other players in the market. I like to think about what we offer to the customers and how we are continuously improving for our customers.
one advantage that people mention that you have versus online, your competitors, is that customers can buy online and pick up in your stores or send back products that they don't like to the stores. Do you feel that's why you were so charmed by these dual category?
So I'll tell you that in the last few years, one of the big trends that we've seen is that customer journeys become multi-channel, right? No, like customers no longer go to the stores and then complete the transaction at the store, and then if they have a problem they go back to the stores. It's more, customers may start discovery and education online, and then they go to the stores, and while at the store they might interact with your website or with other competitors. So it's they jump from one channel to the other, and we need to make it seamless for them, that whenever they need to interact with you, whether they complete the purchase at the store, whether they complete it online, it doesn't matter, as long as it's easy from them to go from one channel to the other. And for sure, pick up in store, it's one of those great differentiators, especially for a country where you cannot leave the package outside customers' homes, as it happens in the US, because most likely it won't be there by the time you get home. A lot of people don't have anyone who will be at home to receive the package. So being able to have a place where they can pick it up and it's near their homes, it's a great advantage. Not only that, it's also more efficient for us in terms of costs, because rather than delivering products to 20 different households, you do it to one single location, which is our stores. And lastly, it's the additional sales that come from the additional traffic. So when
Uh,
customers come to the store to pick up the package, it varies by category. But what we've seen in models similar to Coppel is that around 40% of customers will buy something in addition to what they're picking up. So that's great news, right? And as I said, it varies by category. In a model for drugstores, this percentage goes as high as 70%. So you're there to pick up your package, but then you realize that you forgot aspirins or band aids or diapers or whatever it might be. So I think it's super interesting for any retailer.
Gloria, I think we have time for one more question. So I want to ask you to finish off where you see Coppel Digital in 2030, in 5 years' time. Do you see it at 20, 30% of sales? Do you see Coppel developing a super app? Do you see Coppel offering a streaming video service? Where do you see your division in the future?
So we see it representing double what it is for us right now in the next. So 2030, that's 5 years from now, and having a more integrated and seamless experience with the stores. So we talked about the advantages that the stores give to digital, but we haven't talked about what digital provides to the stores. And for example, having QRs in areas where the space is limited. For example, mattresses, motorcycles. Those products are so bulky that you can only exhibit a limited amount, right? Because you need to optimize your floor plans. But having QRs with the rest of the selection is one of the initiatives. Improving our kiosk experience as well, providing pin pads, providing printers for them to print their order, pick up in store, expanding that as well, improving our app, we're changing the platform. There's quite a bit of initiatives around how to grow and provide a better experience for our customers.
Brilliant. Gloria, that was super interesting. Thank you very much for your time. Look forward to going online and buying some Coppel products this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, now we're going to move to film production in Mexico. And it's a real pleasure to have with us today Rodrigo Sebastián González. Rodrigo is executive producer and co-founder partner of Wu Films. Wu Films, as many of you may know, is a leading Mexican production company. Among its recent hits, Pedro Páramo, Juan Rufo novel, turned into a fantastic Netflix film, which I strongly recommend. Los Dos Hemisferios de Luca, which for several weeks was number one in Netflix in the non-English speaking category, which is pretty remarkable for a Mexican film of that nature. Zelda 211, which is just out. Strongly recommended. Las Viudas de los Jueves, set in Maninalco, which I know well. Temporada de Huracanes, and many more. I think it's fair to say that Wu Films is the leading Netflix producer based in Mexico. So, Rodrigo, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you for coming.
So we heard last week that Netflix is going to be investing next 4 years, I think, $1 billion in Mexico. What does that mean? What does that represent? And why do you think they're doing it?
Well, I believe it's a great news, of course, because you can read the sign is that they believe in Mexico and we have the talent in Mexico in order to perform. It's not easy to be at the level of Netflix. It's not easy because you compete with all the content around the world. You can produce in many places. So if they choose Mexico to do this big investment, is telling a lot of things. There is a lot of things happening. I believe our content is strong enough to be relevant in other countries. And that's a good news. Once you have the talent, once you have the stories that is relevant to others, you are now worldwide. You are in that level, and Netflix is watching Mexico as a partner for them to keep growing and to keep having a lot of new content and relevant content. So I believe it's a very good news, and also betting to the country. A lot of things are happening around the world, and it's not easy to decide where to allocate that capital. And if they choose Mexico, of course, it's a great news for Mexico and for all the producers and all the talent in Mexico. I am very glad of that news, of course.
And how many people subscribe to Netflix in Mexico? How big is Mexico as a market?
Well, it's hard to have exactly the data, but it's relevant, of course, in Latin America. And I believe it will be increasing day to day. I expect that Mexico could be like 30 million subscribers and is relevant for Netflix, of course.
And do you think they're investing this money in Mexico mainly for the Mexican market, or do you think they're also, as we saw with Los Dos Hemisferios de Luca, and they're also seeing Mexican content selling well to the Hispanic market in the US or the French market, dubbed into French and so on?
No, I believe, of course, Mexico market is important, but if we are lucky, one of our contents could go to other countries. For example, with Luca's World or Dos Hemisferios de Luca, we have a very nice surprise that we have been in top 10 in the last 4 weeks worldwide. So it's in non-English speaking, but that's a good achievement. It's not easy to compete with all the content around the world, all the quality of the content, all the past content, because you can buy the license. So more often, the quality of our content could be seen in all the world and to be recognized in the world. So, of course, creating content in Mexico is not just for Mexico. Another example, Zelda 211 also was in top 10 in worldwide at the same time in the series part. And a lot of franchises, for example, La Casa de las Flores was our first big success. La Casa de las Flores was a big success outside Mexico that Netflix started to hiring us to produce in Spain because what's so relevant that content in Spain. So we open offices in Spain in order to keep the content and to keep the track of Netflix. So of course the content in Mexico can expand frontiers for sure.
Rodrigo, what does this mean to the film industry that Netflix will invest 1 billion in? What for your business? Do you have a pipeline of products already lined up for them to be shown, or tell us a little bit about the repercussions directly on your company?
Well, 10 years ago was a different world without Netflix. 10 years ago, even though Mexico was a pioneer in producing, but was another business. Once the platforms arrived, everything changes. Of course, a lot of inflation happened because a lot of demand of content, so the talent is limited and you don't have enough people to do the work. So it was a challenge for the industry because all the crew was more expensive year by year because the demand. And also the war between platforms develops a lot of new content. So a lot of production was happening. I feel like now it's more consolidated. Now the players start doing what they know what to do. For example, they focus on their content. HBO is focused on their content, Disney is focused on their content, and Netflix is focused on their content. And the studios also starting again to be relevant. The platforms also evaluate to produce themselves and also to produce with the studio or to buy for the studio or to hire a production company to produce. So a lot of new businesses are around these investments and also the salaries, for example, they were a big gap 10 years ago. Now it's not that big for the US. We still be competitive, but it's not that relevant. So, of course, it will be challenging to participate in that investment because you have to deliver. It has to make sense for Netflix. You have to deliver quality. You have to deliver a good story because it's not like, okay, we have money, you can do a movie and everybody will win. Of course not, because it has to be relevant. So all the economy that happened with this kind of investment help us a lot to be better, help us a lot to be like trying all the time to do the best things. But it's glad we have to celebrate, of course, because we have money to work. No? But there is also pros and cons. The pros is that you work for Netflix, the best platform for movies and series, but they are the owners of the content. So this is investment very good for them as the owners of the property. But in the other hand, we need to still working for our old property. And for that, you don't have that budget. You have to, so you have the cons that if you want your own movies and you have, you are competing with the 1 billion investment of Netflix for their content. So you have pros and cons. Of course, if you're a production company, you want to work with the best and you are glad that you have that kind of opportunities, but it's a challenge because you have to deliver. So it's a good news, but it's not like for free. You have to do it.
Tell us, I mean, you look for the stories yourselves or the stories come to you? How does it work?
Both ways. Sometimes Netflix discover the story, and Netflix decides, okay, this production company is good at this, and this other production company is good at that, and they hire you, and you do all the creativity. You create your writer's room. You do everything. Of course, every green light is decided by Netflix because they are the owners of the product, and they have a lot of experience. We have a lot to learn from them, and that's very good for us.
Correct.
But other times, that Netflix are like searching for some type of content, and you are developing two, three things at the same time, and you pitch to Netflix to say, okay, maybe this could work for you. And sometimes works, and is with the pipeline or the strategy of Netflix or other platforms can work. But it's so difficult to have something relevant because it's so many content out there that it's not easy to find like the nice story. That's why also like purchase the books, stories of success stories in the past, like Temporada de Huracanes was one of the best sellers in Mexico, or Las Niñas Bien was another example. It was like a big franchise, so we like took advantage of that as a brand and developed our own story, and we create it's a funny fact here. We bought the Las Niñas Bien rights. We create the movie. It was a great movie, and then Guadalupe asked if she can do the book of the movie. So it was like an opposite purchase of the rights, and she wrote it. So
We're talking about Guadalupe Loaiza,
Guadalupe Loaiza, right.
the writer.
So it's funny things happen.
And in that case, you are the owners of the property of the Las Niñas Bien, or you
Yes.
sell them
No,
to
in
Netflix?
this case, we purchased directly as Wu Films,
Okay.
and we sold it later to Netflix and to other platforms. And to, for example, Temporada de Huracanes is another example. We bought the rights, and then Netflix acquired that rights from us in order to create the movie. No?
Okay, in that case,
In that case, was
they were the
different. Or Anonima was another case that was a coming of age book, and Netflix saw the opportunity, and they say, okay, let's do it together. We create everything, all the idea, all the money, all the rights are owned by Netflix. But it was a great successful. We were nominated to the Emmys with that movie, and so it's you have to dance. We as independent company in Mexico, we have like two ways of thinking. We say, okay, we need these great projects that are very profitable, and you are seen in 190 countries. Of course, that's like the main purpose of a producer. But on the other hand, we also decide to invest in a reputational movies. We call it like that because we also want to go to festivals. We want to go to Cannes, to Berlin, to Toronto, to Morelia. So it's not a game because it's a lot of effort. It's not like a hobby. No, it's not like that. But you understand that not all movies are for profits. No, and so that's like the way we saw the opportunities. This is a good opportunity for reputational, for ego reputational part, and this other is for commercial.
Correct.
It's very difficult to be in both markets. There are some exceptions, of course, but not in our case. You are in one part of the brain or in the other part of the brain. No?
Correct. I mean,
you're in both, right? I mean, you did Pedro Paramo, but you did Rebelde.
Exactly.
Oh no, right? Of course, we but the same movie cannot be in both.
No, I get that.
Yeah, so we of course we develop some movies for the festivals, and also the budget is so little, and also the budget is very limited, and is everything is planned for just festivals. And in the other hand, everything has to be big. Everything has to be Netflix quality. Many times we said we cannot produce with this budget because we will not be at the level that you are used to it. So we need this budget, and we need these actors, and we need this director, because if
more
not,
expensive.
we will not fulfill the project. It will be hard.
Let me ask you, like in all businesses, there are ratios of success in commercial enterprises. How do you view, or what's your ratio of commercial success, even with Netflix? I'm sure not all shows turn out to be as good as you had thought
No,
they
of
would
course
be.
not. No, of course not. I have a lot of bad stories, of course.
We'll focus on the good ones if you want.
No, but for example, it's a good sign to be in the top 10 of Mexico that's a very hard thing to be.
To accomplish, right?
Yeah, because you are competing with all the content around the world. But Netflix, they do not share the data. It's not a public data. So it's hard for us to really understand how successful was our movie or our series. But we have like this feeling when we talk with Netflix and they are happy. So we know that things are going good, going well. For example, you bet in some projects. We did one project that was very difficult to film. It was filmed in Finland in winter with a very good actor, with very good, all the pieces were in the table. It was okay in festivals, but commercial wise, it was a totally failure. And was our biggest bet at that moment. It was like 8 years ago. And you never know about what's working and what's not. It's hard. And for another example, this Anonymous film that I just talked about, it was like we needed a quick content for a very specific strategy of Netflix. It was very quick project, very fast, and was nominated for Emmys. Like you never know, and sometimes also the success is different for the platform. Pedro Paramo, we are very proud of that movie. It was very well received in festivals. It was in Toronto. I believe it's a great movie, like Opera Prima as a director of Rodrigo Prieto. It's a great movie, and we believe Netflix is very happy with our product. But sometimes maybe we were expecting more commercial success, but the strategy for Netflix in this type of content is not a commercial thing.
It's a reputation,
reputation thing, because also Netflix wants to have products for festivals, because also one wants to attend the target of people who likes movies of festivals.
Yeah, like Netflix produced Roma.
That's a good example.
And they got Paron got the Oscar, and that was great for Netflix.
That's a good example.
Yeah, because even I could see that sometimes the advertising of the more artistic, let's call it, type of films like Pedro Pan, I haven't seen as many ads on bus stands and things like that as I have seen with Lucas World.
Right.
So I think Netflix also decides which one is going to be more commercial.
Of course. And they have all the data, and
They have all the
what
data
to
too.
do. Yes.
Correct.
Rodrigo, if a young person was to ask you for advice on how to be a successful producer in Mexico, especially providing content to Netflix, what would you say the sort of 3 or 4 things to that person to be a success if they were starting from scratch?
Well, first of all, there is not like a secret sauce. It's a hard work thing, and also it's a very professional industry. It's funny because I always discuss with my business friends that I told them, if you review your script, if you review your business plan as we review our script for a film, you will have another story in your business. It's very professional, and it sounds like a very creative thing and like a funny thing, but it's not. It's not for fun. It's very professional. So first of all, they have to know that is a job, and it's a very professional job, and it's not like just it's hard. Yes, that's the reality of the industry. The other thing that for me is the most important is why you want to do it, because a lot of scripts that I receive weekly, and I read the scripts, and everybody have like a crazy aunt and a crazy grandmother, and they think that is the best story to tell. Everybody, or also a crazy wife. But everybody has one. So and the story, if you're telling your story, is very important for you, but it's not important for me and not important for the other one. And we ask why you want to tell this story and why you want to spend 4 years, because that's the average that you will
Spend in
spend in one movie. 4 years, if everything goes perfectly right. So and you detect that like a lot of the answers is an ego thing. A lot of the answer is because I believe is important, but at the end, it's hard to tell what's important, why this story matters. So it's always the entrepreneurs or the new people who wants to start in this business. They really have to do it for the right reason, for the correct reason. Some stories they matter. Some stories you have to tell the stories, but not all the stories that you like matters. No, so it's difficult to understand the difference, but they have to be very, very sure that they want to spend a lot of time in that project. So it must matter. No, of course, like every business, you need a lot of luck because you can have a good story, you can have a good talent and good crew, but you are not relevant in that moment for the platform. For example, in our case for La Casa Las Flores, it was a big, big success that we were talking with trans people, with gay people. That it was like, wow, right now, it was like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. Right now, if I pitch, I have a story of a gay couple that it's like that's not new. That's a regular thing. It's the day to day. Like it's nothing new, you know. But 10 years ago was very relevant. So, or for example, in Temporada de Huracanes, one of the biggest surprises in the book is that one of the main characters was a he, no, and not a she. And in the movie, we said that's not relevant anymore. It was relevant 5 years ago, even though in the book was perfectly relevant. Actually, in the first scene of the movie, you detect that it's a he, and because everything is changing. No, so you have to be aware that the thing that you are starting to work today, maybe in 4 years, will not be relevant, and you have to be very resilient to be that 4 years working hard, but also open that maybe at that moment your content will not be relevant. So that's why you have to be working like 3 or 4 projects at the same time in order to be relevant.
Well, Rodrigo, thank you so much for talking to us. It's very interesting to hear you tell us about the film industry, the complexities of it. So we're very grateful that you spent some time with us.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Damien. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you everyone for listening again to Mex Moves. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell button to get notices on our next podcast. Damien?
Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you, everyone. We'll talk and listen. We hope you listen to us again next week.